Modern day Star Trek, Star Wars, and a bunch of other lackluster film and TV shows, it feels like it's been a while since we had a really good adult science fiction movie. One with political intrigue that you actually want to follow, interesting characters, a unique and harsh world, good action and effects, characters having to make tough choices, and just a great story overall. But that's what you got with the first Dune, which you get even more in Dune Part 2. So I guess to start this review off, I should let it be known that at the time of this recording, I have not read any of the Dune books. So I won't be able to make any observations on any changes made in the movie, but the fact that I now plan to read all the Dune books should let you know that I actually liked both these movies. Dune Part 2 picks up exactly where the first Dune left off and ends making you feel satisfied with how it resolved almost everything from the first movie. But it also leaves you wanting more and to see how things go on a more galactic scale. So it's good that the director, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, wants to do a third movie based on the second book. So hopefully Dune Part 2 does well in the box office and he can make his third movie. But back to talk about the movie that just came out. Let's start with the performances. Overall, the performances were either good or great. Everyone fit into the character pretty well. Timothée Chalamet had a lot more to work with in terms of character complexity with Paul, and was able to bring a bit more to the table with this film than the last. I thought he wasn't good in the first one, he just got to do a lot more than his watching and learning phases that he had to do. He got to show more conflict on becoming a leader and interpreting his visions, as well as the turn that happened to him once he was able to accept what he had to do and the visions had become more clear. I think he did a great job and I like him as Paul. I didn't have that much of an impression on Zendaya's performance in the first movie because, she was hardly in it. In part 2, as you would expect, she is heavily involved. And I thought she did pretty good too. I have heard that her character in the book is a little different than how she was in the movie, and you can see some of Zendaya's MJ from the Spider-Man movies in her performance. So, I guess they could have changed the character to fit her acting range, but overall, I think it worked pretty well in the movie. Yeah, Zendaya isn't the most transformative actor, but she did do good in this. I liked how she was a skeptic of the religion of the Freemen and the prophecy of their version of the Messiah, but she did believe in Paul and truly loved him. She just wanted her people to be free from the Empire and the great houses coming and killing them and taking their spice. Zendaya does have a very distinct skeptic face, and it did make me occasionally go, oh yeah, she's doing her Zendaya stuff. But, overall, they made it work, and it didn't really damage the movie quality for me. My favorite performance, however, actually was Javier Bardem as Stilgar. I loved how he was able to be intimidating, but also lovable. He was even able to bring a little humor in the movie to help, once in a while, break up all the politics and heavy moments. But you also really believe that he was a die-hard believer in Paul being the Mahdi. All the returning cast did just as good as the first movie. Notably, Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica and Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron. Even Dave Bautista did pretty well, for a Dave Bautista performance where he isn't playing Drax. As for new characters, I did really like Christopher Walken as the Emperor, and Austin Butler as Fade Rotha Harkonnen. Austin Butler did all the typical things you expect from a villain described as a warrior and a psychopath, including the standard knife lick. But he did all these tropes so well and just had so much crazy in his eyes. Really, really made it good and made him feel threatening and like a better warrior than Dave Bautista's Wazoo. Moving on from performances, let's talk about the action. I loved the shields from the first movie, and that is the reason why they had to make combat with swords and knives and all these interesting specialty weapons that would have to burrow through the shield. And in this movie, they start to show more firearms, like the lasers used on the unshielded freemen, and the artillery for the ships and the spice factories. Combat and strategy shown was great. I loved how they used the terrain and the sand to their advantage to hide and strike the enemy like guerrilla warfare, and then use their lasers to destroy the spice factories. And then they used the sandworms in more ways than just transportation. They really utilized everything they had to work with. Although, there are times where it's they have the little snorkel things in sand and the people and the enemies real close on them. It's I think you would be able to see about 30 little black rods sticking out of the sand. But that's just a nitpick. I did like how they didn't have Zendaya go around just punching like the giant Harkonnen men just to have them like fall down like she's super strong and like stronger than them. No, she would sweep the leg, use her blade, but she was quick, she was nimble, or she just had a rocket launcher and blasted a guy. Also, they did like the same thing with Paul, and he's not a big guy. I mean, Timothy Chalamet has got about as big muscles as Zendaya. But again, he was quick and agile, and he used his tools, weapons, and surroundings. Speaking of tools and shields, I will say one thing I kind of noticed, I wish they had a little bit better explanation that I could have picked up on, was the lack of shields used in this movie. I know it's pretty much a nitpick for an otherwise excellent movie, but it bugged me for a few reasons. In the first movie, it seems like everyone had a shield. You know, they were getting hit all the time. They had the blue shimmer and the red shimmer from when it was like a lethal hit. I like that mechanic. I like that in the quick fights and camera shots, you actually saw like the shield taking some damage, or when the people actually got hurt. He had to be a little more creative with how you did the fighting. But in this one, you know, except for a handful of scenes where they show them taking the shield off, or like the ship's having a shield, or, you know, a couple people, no one else really had one. Not even the elite army of the Emperor, you know, who all, their legion had them all in the last movie. I would get if it's only like a royal or great house leaders kind of thing, but, you know, then the Emperor should have had one. You should have seen him turn it on, as well as people like Glossu and, you know, a handful of others. If Gurney Halleck lost his during the invasion in the last movie, you know, why didn't he get a new one while he was a smuggler? He understands how useful they are. Freemen, you know, have the technology to filter water out of practically anything and anywhere. They have giant landmines, lasers powerful enough to destroy the giant moving spice factories, rocket launchers with ammunition specifically designed to penetrate the shields, but they don't have any of the personal shields themselves. A lot of times while watching the movie, I just kept going, man, it sure would have helped if they had a shield on right there. And one of the few times it is shown in like the final battle with Gurney Halleck, they show him killing lots of them and just going through the shields right away with quick slashes like they were nothing. You know, I thought the point of the swords was you had to go slow to get through the shield, and that just did kind of bug me a little. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen the movie and you can tell me why from like a throwaway line or something, and preferably not one from the books, to explain this. It didn't really hurt my overall experience. I'm just mostly curious if I missed something here. The only other real problem I had with the fights was that, you know, Gurney Halleck mentioned how Wazoo, or Dave Bautista's character, gave him his scar after the invasion from the last movie and how he wanted revenge. You know, this was implying that Dave Bautista was a great fighter, but, you know, you don't really see Wazoo do anything impressive fighting-wise this entire movie. I mean, and spoiler, in the final showdown between the two of them, you know, Gurney kills him quickly and instantly with no problem at all. Watching, I was just like, oh, well, that was kind of easy and underwhelming. Oh well, on to the next thing, I guess.
And now for something completely different.
This movie did a great job mixing in the political part of the universe and a fantasy part. I mean, you see more from Paul and his visions. You see shots from the visions Paul had of Chani coming through, you know, with some more context. Paul uses them to a great advantage even before he gets more control over them. But they also show how he fears them and what some of the outcomes his decisions might be leading to. He wants revenge for his father's death, but he also doesn't want to lose Chani and to make the Freemen suffer from his decisions. He doesn't want to believe, or really does believe, he's the Mahdi, you know, because it's something based on the prophecy that the Bene Gesserit have been spreading, but he also wants to use his growing followers to his advantage. And they do such a good job showing this, showing his hesitancy, but his competency in the matter. You know, he's a conflicted man, and he does look for Chani for help and comfort. I love how they show Paul changing from the beginning to the end. You know, how he starts to become more willing to do some of the questionable things in order to win and get the power he needs to help the Freemen and get his revenge. I don't want to spoil too hard the main thing that happens to make him turn, because, I mean, if anyone watching hasn't seen it or read the books, it's very well done, and you really should go see it. There is just so much that can be said and praised about this film, but I hesitate to do so to spoil it for people. There's a lot of symbolism. You can take a lot of meanings from our different shots. And trying to describe all those shots, I don't want to accidentally give something too important away. There's more to praise than there is to criticize. The things to criticize are small, like how the passage of time is not very clear sometimes. Months go by and you really only know how many based on roughly how pregnant Lady Jessica is. And then it's stuff like Paul has gotten his blue eyes overnight, and then he apparently shaves every day and probably had a couple haircuts. I do wish they had shown Paul and Shawnee falling for each other a little more. Again, it just kind of happened quickly between a few scenes. It is a long movie, but there isn't a lot you can cut out, and I even wish there was even more. I wanted to see more stuff like the relationship growth, and I wanted to see more from the Harkonnen side, especially Feyrutha and all of his crazy psychoness. I even want to see more of the Emperor and the Bene Gesserit stuff. Overall, though, I would probably rate this movie around like an 8.5 out of 10. If you really like The Last Dune, then you'll like this one. It's just as good, but it has more action. And I mean, I'm a sucker for some good sci-fi action. Well, I guess that wasn't much of a review, but I mean, it was good. And I just want to spread the word that it's good without spoiling it. Go watch it, go support it, go support the theaters during this, rough time that they're about to have this year with the lack of movies coming out. And then, I guess, like and subscribe. Let me know your comments down below. Bye.